Hello there. I have not made it a secret. Power creep is one of my least favorite things in gacha games, and while I do believe every game needs a very decent amount of it in order to maintain a healthy balance, it starts to become a problem when the main focus of your game is to make every single unit more powerful than the last. It results in a majority of the people playing the game growing disinterested. It doesn't matter if you like X character when you are fully aware that come 2 patches from now they are not going to be the top of the top, and in a year they will no longer even be viable. That being said, I have grown to appreciate Genshin because for the longest time we really didn't have that big of a problem with power creep, as every time a new character came out, it seemed to be like a rising tide, bringing all the ships up with it. However, the tide as of late has begun to rise a little too fast, and the ships are starting to sink. But before we continue, it's time to pay my editors. This time, we're sponsored by LD Shop. Look man, I play a lot of gacha games. I know you do too. Things get pretty expensive after a while, so it's nice to be able to get a little bit of a discount here and there, because at the end of the day, every cent saved is a cent earned. And by using LD Shop, you'll be saving a lot of cents. LD Shop offers up to a 20% discount on all in-game items. And if you want, you could save a little bit more money, with the link down below earning you up to an additional $50 off your next order. And because I'm not one to just throw you to the wolves and have you figured out for yourself, don't worry, I actually tested out the service myself. As you can see, we're currently in Genshin, as you can tell by my ugly filters that you all love to comment on so much. Gonna go on over to LD Shop, go to Genshin, get one of the 3 welcome packs, make sure you select the right server. If you don't, there's nothing you can do for you. Put in the ID, I just copy pasted mine directly from in-game, by the way, you can add me if you want to. And then top up. Alright, and now that the transaction's completed, we're just gonna wait in-game for a little bit and get our item. Okay, there it is, as soon as I alt-tab back into the game. 1, 2, 3. As you can all see, I got my 122 items pretty much immediately, and yeah. I mean, that's pretty much it. So there you go. Save yourself some money, use the link in the description, really helps support the channel. That all being said, let's get back into the video. Power creep in Genshin is now about as bad as it is in Star Rail, unfortunately. It seems like once every patch cycle we get 2 or 3 major new DPS units that raise the standards so significantly to the point where other units feel weak. This is a rip to the Arlecchino mains, who now are totally outclassed by Mavuika in both support and DPS, and God forbid you liked Risley, because now, well, let's just say there's no beating Skirk. Now, of course, the old rule still stands from time to time. There will be a new character that comes out that buffs an old character. For example, Neuvillette is actually very, very powerful right now on Freeze Hydrotus, but in my opinion, that's the exception and not the rule. So with that all being said, I'd like to take the time to discuss the possibility of future buffs. For the longest time, I tended to dismiss the idea because, as it currently stands, MiHoYo didn't really have a track record for buffing their older characters, with the only time in recent memory being Zhongli in version 1.3, who received a massive HP scaling buff, Geo received a rework, and his shield got Resonance Shred, making him one of the best flex units in the entire game even to this day 5 years later. But outside of that, I really couldn't tell you another time where MiHoYo buffed their units until the past year. With the release of Star Rail and now ZZZ, we are seeing the beginning of MiHoYo going back and retroactively buffing old characters like Silverwolf and Blade and Kafka, and in ZZZ, Elle and Joe, which made me think, in Genshin, do we have any characters that are in desperate need of a buff? Characters that are so universally awful that need the extra help? The answer is yes, of course there are. There are plenty of units in Genshin, and while up until recently I would have told you it really doesn't matter because Genshin is such an easy game, with the release of the new in-game mode, we are actually seeing some content that is so difficult that a majority of the community isn't able to clear it. So we have a little list for us to go through. I guess we should start with the obvious one. If you know anything about Genshin and anything about the DPSs in it, there is one character that comes to mind immediately when I say somebody needs a buff. That character being Eula. Jesus Christ, the fall from grace is insane. On Eula's initial debut, she was, without doubt, one of the best DPSs in the game, requiring very little team investment in order to see quite a lot of results. The only thing you as a player really needed to do was make sure you had somebody like Diona to battery and shield and bring an Electro character on the team and you were golden. Eula only really got one major buff with the release of Raiden Shogun, making it to where her energy regeneration issues became significantly less of a problem. That all being said, it's looking pretty rough for her nowadays. Eula has not been meta since all the way back in version 2.5, and in the time since then she's only gotten lower and lower on the totem pole, with new releases like Genshin Mulani having nukes built into their kit that do comparable damage percent with an actual element to react with, while also being able to do the same nuke multiple times a rotation, and without an energy restriction. It is really quite tragic. However, there is a very simple fix for Eula. Eula is a cryo element, but a majority of her damage is physical damage, which is honestly one of the worst in the game because it doesn't really have many ways to make itself more powerful. Yes, you can shred physical res all the way down into the negative percents with the correct build, but that honestly isn't enough. So here's the proposed solution. Turn Eula's damage type into cryo entirely. This will do two things. It'll allow her to gain benefits from some of the more important cryo reactions in the game, like Melt, giving her a significant bump in damage. In addition to that, you will be able to receive cryo res shred if you bring in a full cryo team with a character like a Escoffier. You will be able to receive Cinder City buffs with the help of other cryo characters like Sitlali, and in addition to that, you'll be able to make use of cryo resonance for easy crit rate stack. This will help solve one of her biggest issues where she wants a lot of attack, a lot of energy recharge, a lot of crit, and a lot of crit damage. Lowering the crit rate stat significantly will make it a lot easier for players to build her. Outside of that, the only real thing you could do is add a significant uptick on her elemental burst. I'm talking 4 times what it is now, 5 times what it is now, even 6 times what it is now. Eula's whole thing was she was a nuker who could take down the entire opposition in 1 to 2 rotations max, and with a lot of enemies having iframes where they go into invincible states at specific percentages of HP, she's really going to need a heavy increase in damage to make full utilization of this playstyle. And some may hear me say, oh, just multiply her damage by 5 and think that's over dramatic, but like I said earlier, Qiqi and Mulani are already doing comparable Eula nuke damage in their elemental skill as it currently stands. And Eula will be balanced by the fact A, she's cryo and won't be able to make use of reactions like Melt very well with the current cryo meta, and B, if you don't crit, that's a reset. But hey, just know, Eula isn't alone in the entirely useless category, with another character who has not only been power crept by just teams in general, but has a direct power creep in the form of Chihori. That's right, we're talking about Albedo. I am going to be fully honest with you. Albedo is probably one of the most misidentified units in the entire game. It is very clear that the initial plan for Albedo was to make an elemental mastery scaling geo applicator that can make use of the archaic Petra to buff the primary elements. Some of you may hear me say that and think that I'm on crack, but you need to remember that the original version of the archaic Petra set gave the team a elemental shield based off of the geo reaction that caused Crystallize, and when you picked up this Crystallize core, you would receive a % damage increase, which doesn't sound too far-fetched until you realize that Albedo's elemental burst also causes a massive tick of elemental mastery buff for the team. For this reason, I think that Albedo should lean more into that. Some people may want him to be built with damage, and that's fine if you want to build Albedo with damage, but as it currently stands, if you have a C0 Albedo, you are losing damage if you build him, because his elemental burst scales off of attack, and his elemental skill scales off defense, so you're losing something regardless. So I opted to making Albedo a full defense scaler all the way around. The reason why I think it's best to do this is because A, it's what a C2 already does, and his constellation sucks, so we need to change those anyway, and B, it falls in line with his supportive capability. This will bring his elemental burst and skill in line with one type of damage. However, I really want to build into support, so we'll add the old archaic Petra stat into base kit, where any elemental shield he generates with the crystallize reaction will give you a damage % bonus. This bonus can be a flat rate for all I care. Something along the lines of 12 to 25% seems more than balanced enough. In addition to that, Albedo's elemental burst is often neglected. Nobody really wants to cast it because using it means you're getting an overall damage loss as it doesn't really match scaling. And while we are fixing that scaling problem by making everything scale off defense, I think it'll be better if we give give the elemental burst something it does now, buffing the team's elemental mastery by 120, which is currently part of the base kit, and then an additional value based off a percentage of your defense. The higher Albedo's defense rises, the more elemental mastery will be added on top. And then of course, up the damage modifiers just a little bit. Overall, this will turn Albedo into a more supportive character. He will generate shields for the team at a consistent rate to the point where you don't need to worry about survivability. He will buff the damage values of the team, and he will give you elemental mastery. This will give him a pretty decent role on a team like, for example, Hu Tao Vape, or really any Pyro Vape team. You could also make him even more powerful by throwing Zhongli on the team to make use of the Geo Resonance, getting even more damage percent as well as a resistance shred on top of that. I know it may not be what people want, as Albedo as it currently stands is a pretty powerful sub DPS. However, because Albedo has been just directly power crept by Chihori, I don't think buffing him to further power creep Chihori will be a good idea. You're just restarting the cycle of violence. It'll be best to give Albedo his own identity, and unfortunately, with Geo's current place in the meta, it's highly likely that this version of Albedo will see significantly more use than Chihori ever will. And finally, for the last character that is definitely in need of a buff, we have Qiqi. I feel like this one isn't a surprise. Qiqi has been dogged on since her initial release all the way back in version 1.0 as the worst 5-star in the game. Being a primary healer typically isn't very useful, so let's give her a role. First proposed chain. Her elemental skill needs to generate energy. With Qiqi having a monstrous energy cost and her ability to not generate particles at an efficient rate makes her borderline useless. This change needs to happen before anything else. As it currently stands, the most powerful thing in Qiqi's kit is the ability to mark enemies with her basic attack and then derive healing from these enemies. This effectively makes Qiqi immortal, and while immortality is nice, it really isn't enough for Qiqi. I think she needs something else in her kit, which is why I propose something similar to Nahida's elemental skill. Whereas Nahida can hold the E button and spin around in a circle to mark all enemies, I propose that any enemy hit by Qiqi's skill when it flicks around in a circle will henceforth be marked by her skill. She can still maintain the ability to mark enemies with her auto attack and her elemental burst. This may sound like a lot of application, but you need to understand that they either need to be right next to you to get hit by the skill, auto attacked on with a not DPS character, or in the vicinity of your elemental burst. Whereas Nahida just needs to hold E and spin around in a circle really fast, so it's really not that powerful. Additionally, enemies marked by the effect will receive a debuff. This debuff reduces their res to cryo by 10%. If an enemy who is marked by this effect is killed, you will receive an attack percent bonus based off of Qiqi's attack. In order to balance this out a little bit, Qiqi's healing will be cut in half of what it is now. This will do a couple of things. One, it'll give Qiqi some sort of supportive utility. Like I said before, she does make you immortal, but a lot of healing really doesn't do anything in this game. Giving her the ability to mark enemies with a debuff that buffs your attack and reduces cryo res sounds powerful. However, you will only receive this attack bonus when you kill enemies, meaning it's only valuable in multi-wave content. And 10% cryo res shred really isn't that big of a deal. However, the reason why I propose these buffs is because currently, cryo is one of the best elements in the game. And you'll notice cryo lacks a pretty powerful 5-star healer that isn't a Scoffier. This will give free-to-play players or low spenders something of decent value to put on their skirt teams for the meantime. Or hell, you could just stack it with a Scoffier. It could also make Qiqi a viable pair with characters like Farina on mono freeze carry teams, benefiting DPSs like Ayaka, Ganyu, and Wriothesley who really haven't had a lot of time to shine recently. Do I think they'll buff Qiqi? No, probably not, but a lot of characters in the game do need a buff, and these are just some of the ideas I'd like to propose. If you have something different, or if you want to yell at me in the comments about how I'm wrong and stupid and these ideas are really overpowered, then by all means, tell me that in the comment section down below. That all being said, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe, and peace.